everybody. Here are my audience members for today. Karen Clancy, thank you so much for being here. 5 years ago, I started to experience a host of serious and mysterious symptoms. I began reacting to things that had never bothered me before. It seemed like everything I came into contact with caused some kind of reaction, from small reactions like hives to big reactions like anaphylaxis. Even walking by somebody on the street who was wearing a strong perfume could cause me to be down with a migraine for days. Even temperature changes, going from inside to outside, could cause my face to flush and my eyes to blur and me to get really dizzy. Doctor after doctor could not explain what was happening to me. I felt helpless. I was living in fear of my own body for months. That is, until I met a doctor who knew what was going on and gave me the diagnosis, mast cell activation syndrome. Being diagnosed with MCAS, I have been forced to be my own health advocate. I learned that these small cells, mast cells, can go completely haywire and release chemicals that cause severe and life-threatening reactions. Through research, doctor's visits, and daily management, I have learned to live with MCAS and realized how important these small cells are to our overall health. By exploring what mast cells are, what mast cell activation syndrome is, and how it develops and affects the body, we can understand these crucial cells and the role they play in our health and the immune system. Today, I'm going to cover 3 points: what mast cells are, what mast cell activation syndrome is, and how mast cell activation syndrome affects the body and how it's managed. Now that I've shared a little bit of my personal experience, I'm going to talk about what mast cells even are. An article in the Mast Cell Disease Society, a leading research society on this syndrome, says mast cells are immune system cells that live in the bone marrow, the body tissue, and the organs, such as the GI tract, the lining of the airway, and the skin. Everyone in the world has mast cells. Everyone in this room has mast cells, and they play a key role in keeping us healthy. They're part of the first line of defense. When threats enter our system, like a bacteria, a virus, a pathogen, an allergen, mast cells are the first responders. They release chemicals like histamine, cytokines, and tryptase. These chemicals trigger inflammation, which helps us fight off the threat. So under normal circumstances, mast cells are completely essential. They help heal wounds, fight infections, and regulate the immune response. Sounds helpful, right? However, sometimes they misfire. In mast cell activation syndrome, mast cells overreact and release excessive amounts of the chemicals without a threat or even to a very small threat. They can cause widespread inflammation, which can cause allergy-like symptoms. They're cumulative and they worsen over time and exposure to the triggers. So now that we understand a little bit about what mast cells are, let's take a closer look at this overreaction, why it happens, and what sets it off. Researchers are still trying to pinpoint exactly what causes mast cell activation syndrome. It's still a bit of a mystery, but there are some theories. Some believe that mast cell activation syndrome can result from a genetic mutation, which affects the cell's ability to send and receive signals. Others suggest that it could be caused by environmental factors like chronic inflammation, toxins, and long-term inflammation, which can cause the cells to just become hypersensitive. Because the cases are so varied and present so differently, mast cell activation syndrome is considered a spectrum disorder. It looks different in every single patient, which makes it really hard to diagnose. For me, they believe that mast cell activation syndrome was brought on by continued exposure to black mold in the house that I was living in. And since that, I have lived with daily symptoms. What's even more complicated to understand is the vast array of triggers that can cause this. Common triggers include foods high in histamine, shifts in temperature, emotional stress, sleep disruption, and chemical exposure. All of these things are believed to trigger flares. And because mast cells exist in almost every part of the body, you can have reactions that elicit multiple symptoms at once, which makes it hard for doctors to find the correlation. What's happening here is affecting what's happening here. So now that we've looked at how mast cell activation syndrome develops, let's look at its effect on the body and how to manage it. Like I've said, the symptoms are unpredictable and wide-ranging. The most common symptoms are hives, swelling, digestive pain, diarrhea, vomiting, fatigue, rapid heart rate, dizziness, and brain fog. Sounds fun, doesn't it? In really severe cases, you can have anaphylaxis. What anaphylaxis is when your blood pressure drops, your throat swells, your face can swell, and you can get really restricted breathing and even lose the ability to breathe. This is life-threatening, and you should go to the ER immediately. In an article aptly entitled Allergic to Everything by Kate Raphael, who is an MCAS survivor and researcher, she says, "Today, research suggests that MCAS affects a dizzying number of the population. Up to 17% of industrialized countries could have this syndrome, and it could explain a host of medically mysterious symptoms." MCAS can also mirror other conditions like IBS, anxiety, and allergies. And so it can take years to properly and accurately diagnose. Doctors use lab tests and a clinical history to determine whether or not you're a candidate for MCAS. Though many doctors are really not educated on this topic, so it can be very difficult to find a specialist, and when you do, they often have long wait lists, which just extends that time in getting a diagnosis. There's no cure for MCAS, and because of this, all you can really do is treat the symptoms. Treatments that can help stabilize mast cells and reduce reactivity are things like antihistamines, taking an H1 and H2 blocker that bind to different receptors and can control the allergic response. Mast cell stabilizers like cromolyn sodium or ketotifen can help prevent the release of histamine. Lifestyle management is another thing that helps. So a low histamine diet is often prescribed, stress reduction techniques, environmental control, so limiting your exposure to pathogens, air purifiers, hypoallergenic products, things of this nature can help reduce symptoms. Through careful management and accurate diagnosis, people who are diagnosed with MCAS can regain stability and control of their life. So as we wrap up, let's review what we've learned about this complex and often misunderstood condition. We've learned three main things. Mast cells are crucial immune cells that protect the body. When they malfunction, however, it can cause serious problems. 2, MCAS occurs when cells become overreactive and release chemicals that can cause severe allergy-like symptoms. And 3, while there is no cure, it can be managed through medication, lifestyle changes, and awareness. Mast cells are both the protector and a potential saboteur of the immune system. When they go rogue, life becomes unpredictable and frightening. But understanding MCAS doesn't just help those who live with this disorder. It really reminds us how delicate the immune system truly is and how the smallest cells can have the biggest impact on our lives. Thank you. I'll now open the floor to any questions.
So I've noticed that more people are talking about MCAS since the COVID-19, and I'm curious if there is a relationship between the two.
Absolutely, yeah. So as I kind of mentioned that a virus can cause your cells to do that little switch and activate mast cell activation syndrome, COVID-19 is one of those known viruses that can do that. So it is increasing the amount of MCAS that we're seeing in the population.
You talked about your own lived experience with this, and if you were to do the math, how many years would you maybe assume that you had this, but it was going undiagnosed or wrongfully diagnosed?
Yeah. I mean, I really got the diagnosis about 5 years ago. I had had pretty severe allergies for many years before that, so it's really tough to say. I did have just like a generalized anxiety diagnosis for a long time, and I do think that a lot of that was symptoms of the MCAS because since I've been treated, a lot of that has gone away. So who's to really say? You know, it's kind of a mystery. Yeah.